Friday morning, everybody. Thanks for checking in to the latest Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Hills. Lots to get into. More and more attention towards this space of the media right now as rescheduling rumors continue to stay very warm. Also, we're going to address, obviously, the situation what happened in Glass House. But Dan Ahrens and Sammy J are coming on a little bit later, so we'll touch on that and basically get their takes on what we should really take from all this. I know there's still a lot of moving parts, a lot of unconfirmation stuff that's going on, so we'll get our points, get our thoughts, and I know a lot of you have reached out right now on what this might mean for the company and really the impact it has on the overall industry. As well, got some good news, some progress. A bill introduced yesterday, bipartisan support in PA, one step closer to adult use. And if PA goes live, as we've said in the past, this will mark one of the biggest recreational markets in the industry. And to find out more on a lot of that stuff, we're going to bring Trent Woloveck from Jushi on, who's got his ear to the ground on what we can anticipate next year in PA. So a good Friday morning, and let's welcome in AV. As a lot going on. And
a lot going on.
A
lot going on. Last week got a little last episode got a little contentious. Decided to pile it on with our guests. Probably should have held back from that stuff. But Ben, if you're watching, we would love to have you on.
Yes.
And just talk about the industry and talk about what your plans are moving forward and for all to have you on the podcast.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to make something clear, and this is to all of our audience, and it's very important, I guess, with this platform because we are established as the number one business platform here in the space. But before we get into today's show, I do want to take a minute to directly, to our audience. As we know, you've likely seen some strong opinions expressed on this platform in recent episodes, and we all know what we're talking about. And whether you agree or disagree, I want to make it clear that's what makes real dialogue valuable in industries like the cannabis industry and capital markets. Now, could things have been said differently? Maybe, but what's done is done, and here's what won't change. I want to make it clear that this platform exists to host conversations, not control them. The views shared by our guests are their views, not the views of Traded Black as a whole. So we're not here to be the thought police. Our job is to ask real questions, invite real opinions, reflect the wide range of voices that shape these emerging sectors. That includes operators, investors, analysts, and yes, critics. So balance doesn't come from one episode. It comes from the overall body of work, show by show, conversation by conversation, where we want to shine a light on different perspectives for our viewers to evaluate. So as always, I'll continue to hold myself accountable. The standard of keeping the discussions focused, productive, and worth your time. And I want to make it very clear, we need to get behind each other and support. Were there some things that maybe I could have interjected on Wednesday? Absolutely. But like anything, progress, not perfection. This too shall pass. I hear everybody that's out there, but I want to make it very clear. Ben Kovler, he is running perhaps the best company in the industry right now. He recruited a lot of good players. So that's something to be said. Was it something I should have interacted and pushed back on Wednesday? I'm taking full accountability for that, and it's right. But most important thing here, I want to make sure that we obviously, as we get to this next stage of the industry, we're behind each other, we support each other, and onwards and upwards, because that's what we most importantly need. I hope that explains my stake in all this, but I don't really need any feedback from you, Anthony, but you're a great co-host and provide a lot of great dialogue and insight. And just want to make sure that this platform continues to be the professional platform that we know it can be, and really being the source on how this industry is going to evolve and grow. All right?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. With that, let's get into today's show. We got some good news regarding a PA. So with that, let's welcome in the Chief Strategy Officer of Jushi Holdings back to the podcast, Mr. Trent Woloveck. Happy Friday morning. What a week. What a week.
To say the least. Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's there's a lot of moving parts.
I'm glad you got the black shirt memo today for the Friday, and
you like that?
AV's rocking the Bandon Dunes shirt. So you guys got the garb all ready to rock and roll for me. I appreciate that.
Golf shirts out on a Friday. That's for sure. Before we get into some PA news, it's pretty it's almost surreal when you think all the people outside of the cannabis industry with these big following on Twitter, the amount of media attention this is getting about rescheduling. Rumors are circulating. We could get some sort of announcement. I don't know if that's the case or not, but all in all, what do you make of everything that's transpiring here in the industry and the amount of attention it's getting over the past week? It's for me, I love it because it's the media landscape, and this is what we've been waiting for not months but years.
Yeah, look, as somebody who's ridden the cannabis roller coaster since 2010, there are highs and there are lows.
Yeah.
And we've been, riding the down roller coaster to some of the lowest lows. But keep in mind, in 2016, we had the Cole memo yanked out from under us, and who knew what was going to happen then? That, quite frankly, that's a lot more scary than where we are today with the public markets and so on and so forth. But boy, does it just feel different this time. Somebody who was on the doorstep to get 280E washed, back in 2017 and get it pulled out, last minute because of Mitch McConnell and being lied to by Chuck Schumer on December 2nd, 2022, about SAFER being in the NDAA.
Yeah.
It feels very, very, very real and legit, and quite frankly, coordinated.
That's just it.
To get rescheduling done and dusted. You're starting to hear, rumors around SAFER, conversations about that too. And, I want to call out, rescheduling starts a conversation at the state level, at the local level. It legitimizes everything.
Good point.
And so, rescheduling doesn't hand this industry to pharma. Like, that's just a false narrative. And so, I think it's a step in the right direction. As somebody who's been fighting for the plant for 15 plus years now, we have to do crawl, walk, run, and from a federal level, this feels like a move in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, look, I got in this space 5 years ago, but you and Anthony have been in this for a long, long time. But question for both of you, and we touched on this a little bit, but Anthony, like, to Trent's point, when we get rescheduling announced, this industry gets viewed in so many different ways and so many different conversations. That's with lawmakers. That's the way, the perception, the stigma. And to Trent's point, like, this is just the first step that'll make other things start to actually happen, I think, quicker. What's your thoughts?
It's all, like I've always said, it's incremental reform. We're not going to get comprehensive reform on cannabis. It's been bastardized for the last 50 years and made the devil and reefer madness, and the institutions of government have frowned upon cannabis. You're not going to get a change overnight. We're not going to get descheduling at the snap of a finger. But Schedule 3 is the first step in the government formally acknowledging that cannabis is not a Schedule 1 narcotic. It has accepted medical use. There is need for further innovation. We can lead the world in cannabinoid research and in the industry of cannabis. Bruzewitz tweeted it out today, combating a frivolous article from Kevin Sabat, I think, in the New York Post, that rescheduling actually is going to just push us back into some golden age of, I didn't read it, so I can't really quote what he said as far as the headline goes, but it was just erroneous. It's good to see that the people that are aligning with Trump are actively combating Sam and calling them out for their bullshit. But rescheduling is the first step. Mm-hmm. Rescheduling sets the tone and pushes us for further cannabis reform. Politicians, and I wholeheartedly believe this, cannot back a Schedule 1 substance. They can't. They can't even have nuance really on it to a lot of their base. I think you see the Republicans and you see a lot of conservatives. They're not going to open their arms to cannabis and fully embrace it, but they don't have to hate it when it's not a Schedule 1 substance. When it's becoming more accepted, when it's becoming looser from a regulatory standpoint, it can obviously open the conversation and reduce the friction around the overall goal of, let's say, descheduling and legalization, and getting it off the CSA completely.
Agreed. Well, good point on that tweet from Alex this morning. Sabat obviously tagged him in the tweet, and he's like, he started things off, because you tagged me, I thought I would comment. And
backfired.
100% it backfired. And Trent, when have you seen that in the industry where somebody with a big following outside of the space decides to comment and reply and make some valid points about rescheduling? that's the stuff when you say is calculated that makes you believe that times have changed. And that's the encouraging thing where, yes, we've had our hopes a number of times. You brought up stuff like the Cole memo. You've been involved in this space since is 2010 even a year in cannabis space? That seems like 100 years ago. But now that we're here in 2025, you've been involved for 15 years. Does this feel different to you?
100%. You have, like I said, an orchestrated group of individuals that we know, have large followings on social media, whether we like that or not.
Yeah.
That's the way of the world right now. And so to me, that feels, very organized. I'm going to take all the credit. Last time I was on, you had just spoke to, Mike Tyson. And so you broke the news when I was on. And so, maybe I'm a good luck charm, but
100%. I was going to bring that up in my interview with Mike, Trent.
I'll take it. But look, he is doing a lot of work. There are very smart people that are, helping him and a lot of people behind the scenes of what can and should be done in the right way. And like AV said, it's incremental reform.
Yes.
Like, when in 2010 when I made my first investment, I think we had a whopping 3 states that were medical and 0 states that were adult use. By the way, when Biden, when he was in the Senate and they did sentencing guidelines, back in the mid 90s or early 90s, none of that existed. And so we have gotten to 40, 41 states now that are medical, 24, with Pennsylvania soon to be 25. There's a little transition for you, Shad and AV, but all of that's been done by a lot of work by a lot of people. It's not one person, it's not 5 people, it's not 10 people. It's a multitude of people that have been responsible in growing cannabis across this country at a state level from a medical perspective and then an adult use perspective to get to where we're at right now. And there are no shortcuts. There are no jumping to the finish line within this industry. It just takes good, hard work. And, NVIDIA, Jensen Huang says it best. He has shown up for 65 plus years and just has worked hard every single day. And look what he's produced. The first $4 trillion business in the world. And so it's nothing more or nothing less than that.
For those that have consistency and see results, they understand the importance of that. But for those that don't, it's so badly overlooked. But I think truthfully, in anything you do in life, the number one goal, or I should say result of success, is consistency. And you got to apply it day in, day out. And I know you want to hit the home run every single day, but slow, small increments. And like you've said, 3 states to now potentially 25 rec. Is it 39? I thought it was 39 medicinally, but I could be wrong. But
I think Texas made it 40.
Yeah. You get the drill.
And it's if Schedule 3 wasn't going to be, let's say, the first step forward to lead to greater reform, I think Kevin Sabet and Sam would be for it, because Schedule 3 literally is a smart approach to marijuana. It does not increase. It is. There's no other way to look at it. If you want to talk about a smart approach to the plant as it stands today, the next logical step, or the smartest logical step, would be Schedule 3. It increases medical research. It does not increase accessibility. It creates a better environment for the companies to then generate tax dollars, as well as allocate funds towards medical research. It is a smart approach to marijuana.
That is great. I love
true.
That.
It's true. And the other thing, just to be clear, Schedule 3, all that does is, really remove 280E from like an actual fundamental business perspective. But as somebody who spends a lot of time talking to investors and legislatures and regulators, way more than I would have ever thought I would have in my career, it's a psychological thing as much as anything else from a business fundamental perspective. And when you have the president pro tem of Pennsylvania, she tells you legalization in her mind is rescheduling. That just tells you what the psyche is.
I know,
for folks.
And by the way, the White House just tweeted basically mocking Glass House.
They did that last night too, by the way. But yes.
Yeah, it was 21 minutes ago. It was ICE, raids marijuana farms filled with illegal aliens. Crying Jimmy, who is a California congressman, who's obviously a Democrat, says they're just picking straw. They've got a picture of him crying. This is an assault. This Glass House raid, it's not an assault on, and I firmly believe this, if you look at the narrative that's being put on Twitter. This is not an assault on marijuana. It's collateral damage. This is an assault on Gavin Newsom, the state of California, and the immigration raids as it relates to ICE. Everything that they're saying is centered on California Democrats, immigration, and the ICE raids.
Does this play into the rescheduling narrative? Like,
I don't know. I can't take it that far, but
yeah.
I don't think this isn't cannabis driven. This is just collateral damage. And I think that they saw the popularity of cannabis maybe with these rescheduling tweets, and they realized that if they want to get something to amplify their immigration agenda as it relates to the state of California, let's go after the biggest farm in the state and see how that reverberates.
Well, don't forget, ICE knocked on that door a month ago.
Correct.
And they said, go pound sand.
Correct.
And so that's not a good position to be in to continue business status quo when you know that's happening. And so there's been a lot of good reporting on the illicit market, and how that's filtered throughout the United States in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Both from Mexican cartels, but also the CCP.
Yeah.
And I've been saying it for the better part of I don't even know how long now. Every dollar into the legal industry is $1 less for cartels and Chinese crime syndicates. I mean, it's fact that this is being proven right in front of our eyes. I got to be honest, like it's being literally played out right in front of our eyes. And whether this was like Laura Loomer didn't say a lick about cannabis with this raid. It was all about illegal immigrants. And so, AD is just another example of, a Trump megaphone that is talking about organized crime. I think she even mentioned, trafficking in her tweet as well. And so, look, whether you're in the hemp industry or the regulated cannabis industry, like, again, you can't take shortcuts. If you're producing at $100 or so a pound, which is 22, 23 cents a gram, and nobody's ever done that before, I'll say what I always say. The math doesn't really math.
No, I hear. Yeah.
The labor is a big pool of that cost.
Real quick, want to ask you one last question before we get into PA. If rescheduling is announced, do you see some sort of banking? We talk about the Genius Act and crypto and how there's a deadline by Senator Tim Scott by September 30th. Does cannabis get tied into that? Do you see banking being provided with SAFE or an executive order or anything along those lines happening real fast after that?
I think it's got to be safer past legislation in order for financial institutions to take a real look at the industry. I don't think rescheduling itself gets that done. And so I think it's going to take legislation and, like I said, a lot of really smart, good people in this industry have been working on, some version of SAFE for the better part of, 3+ years now. And so it's on the doorstep. I think personally, the legislature is waiting to see Trump follow through on a piece of cannabis, aka rescheduling, to have them feel comfortable in passing legislation that would help progress the cannabis industry, the regulated cannabis, state-regulated cannabis industry.
100%. I agree. Look, it's almost 11:25, so let's segue. Potential 25th state, PA. Good news out of Harrisburg yesterday. We're seeing bipartisan support from lawmakers. They've officially filed a bill to legalize adult use cannabis. This is your baby. You guys follow this space very closely. In the state of Pennsylvania, over half of your dispensary locations are within this state. So there's a very, very big vested interest for you and Jushi. So saying that, this is the main reason why I have you on. What does this news mean yesterday? It's definitely a step in the right direction. But do you feel even, I don't want to say more confident, but does this step forward mean it's only a matter of time that adult use does get passed in Pennsylvania?
Yes, is the short answer. And why I feel so confident in saying yes is, Senator Laughlin and Senator Street have been leaders on adult use cannabis for 3, 4, 5 years now. They've had real conversations with many different stakeholders. They've reworked the bill this year to include a lot of those conversations. I think you're going to see a bill drop in the House that's 95 to 97% similar to this bill in the coming days. And so not only will you have bipartisan support, but you'll have bicameral support. What does that mean? That means it's time for the governor to step up and not just tweet about cannabis, but get all of leadership. They call it a 5-party conversation in Pennsylvania, into a room and hash out a deal to include adult use cannabis with the budget this year.
The bill also rejects the state-run store model that was floated earlier this year, as we know, and that matters. So do you think lawmakers are finally starting to understand that, I guess, a successful cannabis market needs private investment and real, I guess, world execution? Because this can't go unnoticed.
Yeah, it's simple, Shad. You've heard Jim say it. You've heard me say it. They were about $2.5 billion apart on a budget.
Yep.
With the big beautiful bill passing, they just lost $130 million a year in SNAP benefits, and they lost anywhere between $2.5 to $3.5 billion of Medicaid support from the federal government. And
there you go. There you
go. Call it 2.6 to 3.6. Split the baby. Let's call it $3 billion on top of a $2.5 billion gap in a state that's already running a deficit that only has $7 to $8 billion of rainy day fund left. There was a report out earlier this year that said, they have maybe 2 years left of backup. Well, that 2 years becomes zero really fast if you try to cover the gap that the federal budget or the big beautiful bill just left, removing all of those things. In AV, I'll tie it to your Gavin Newsom statement about the illegal aliens, working on a farm. By the way, Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania, is probably tabbed as the front runner on the Democrat Party to run for president in 2028. And so if you don't think the Trump administration is going to make his life as miserable as possible for the next 3.5 years, you must not watch politics in the United States recently. And so they're going to keep throwing, grenade after grenade, challenge after challenge at the governor, and let's see how he responds. I mean, this in skill games to get a 750 to $1 billion of tax revenue into the door a year, to be able to bond that over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that deficit goes away pretty fast. And so, no matter how good we are at our jobs around educating folks on cannabis, sometimes it just boils down to one thing and one thing only: tax revenue. And that's what they need.
What's this do for institutional interest when you look at possibly rescheduling? Plus, if this does pass, because we all know, and we've talked about this for quite, I don't know how many years, PA will be, if passed, one of the biggest rec markets in the US. And man, oh man, like rescheduling, this has been a long thing in the making.
Long thing in the making. Yes. But look, the bill says we turn on in 180 days. I think that could, again, going back to taxes, that could realistically be 30 days.
Yep.
More than likely, maybe you split the baby and turn it into 90 days. But they need tax revenue tomorrow or yesterday, quite frankly. And so the infrastructure of, $1 billion plus into the ground already in Pennsylvania, almost 200 stores open and operational in the state of Pennsylvania, plenty of supply to maintain, patients and what they need. And then add on the adult use consumer that's going to Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, hemp stores. That all comes into the regulated market, and you get the tax, whatever it is, what will shake out to be somewhere in the low teens. That's real money, and that's real money today. The House Bill 1200 was never a real thing because they were going to have to build stores, stand up stores, find supply. I mean, you're talking years before they even got something to market. By the way, they would be spending hundreds of millions of dollars doing that. That doesn't work in the real world.
Well, math doesn't math.
Yeah, it doesn't math. Yeah,
well, the math doesn't math. But the math does math in the event that this does pass. Remind me again, 18 of your 42 locations are in PA, correct?
18 of our 40 locations are in Pennsylvania. All of them are operational. 3 in Greater Pittsburgh, 6 in the Northeast Scranton area, 9 in Philadelphia. Like, let's play. I have 125,000 square foot grower processor. We're adding on right now. We have drawings being done to add additional flower capacity. Let's play.
Yeah. Well, a lot of big MSOs, such as yourself, very, I would say, well-grounded and well-established in that state. But one thing I would say as far as the takeaway here today from what you've just shared with me is this one big, beautiful bill and how a lot of their tax dollars from this passing have now basically been pushed to the side. How much do you think that plays in to this bipartisan support as to what's happened in the last week based off of that bill and then potentially building momentum for this?
Yeah, look, there's always been bipartisan, bicameral support in Pennsylvania for adult use cannabis. That's been there. There's been a lot of work done by Senator Street, Senator Laughlin, Representative Kincaid, Representative Major, a laundry list of people. I mean, you saw President Pro Tem Kim Ward sign on to the bill for Danny a couple weeks back around a cannabis regulator. I mean, that is a major, major step for somebody that people have thought for a long, long time was the blocker in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
She's not.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it's time for, the leadership, the administration to get into a room, get this thing done. And that's going to fall squarely on the governor's shoulders to get this pushed over the line. whether that the budget gets done mid-July or mid-August, kind of anybody's guess. But
and you believe he does,
money, and that's it.
You believe he steps up, obviously, considering that you had said that you believe adult use is going to pass.
It's the one thing I know about Josh Shapiro, he looks at polls, he understands polls, and this poll's at 70+% in Pennsylvania. If you ask the question, do you want status quo or do you want a regulated adult use market? It tests in the 90s for the most conservative Senate districts in Pennsylvania. I mean, we just saw polling, it's, in the 60s nationally, and it's into the 90s for medical and adult use.
Well, Trent, you talked about it earlier, perception, reality. Like if you get rescheduling as well, that's going to have an impact on, even on the state's level. People are going to look at this differently and say, look, we can't, this is a train that's left the station. So we embrace it. We get in tax dollars. It's already a very progressive and established medical market in Pennsylvania as well. But I think with rescheduling, it only obviously, adds more fuel to the fire that, the future is here and now when it comes to cannabis. We need to embrace it and look at it as opportunity versus this 1980s stigma.
Yeah. And the other thing the big, beautiful bill did do, I will add on, I just think it gave a shot in the arm to the Democratic nominee in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, who was up 17 points. I can't wait to see the next polling when that comes out. She's been on a bus tour, getting out, shaking hands, kissing babies. She's the real deal. And so, when the time comes for November to roll around, we feel in a very good position about where she'll shake out along with the House there. And, we can finally get a bill signed by the governor instead of having it vetoed like the last 2 years.
Last thing before we jump into our second segment, timeline-wise, I know everybody wants to know what's a realistic date, Gary writes, when Pennsylvania could make a decision. I've heard rumors that the budget won't be finalized towards, later part of the actual calendar year. Michael Bronstein's on. He does think that if this is passed, then we could see this go live January 1, which is encouraging. But you have any insight on when a decision realistically could be made?
All I'll say is follow the budget timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this will coattail that.
Great answer. So you're not going to say September 14th at 3 p.m. That's probably a wise thing to say.
I've learned my lesson. I think I was on and I said I'll be dunking chicken tendies in my champagne at one point for rescheduling. So I will take my medicine and be realistic about
I hear you.
What needs to happen on this front. So
all right, my friend. Listen, good seeing you. Thanks for the update. Let's keep in touch. And clearly, if we get some sort of news regarding PA or even rescheduling, we want to get some of the regular guests that are on our podcast from time to time. You are obviously in that dressing room, so to speak, and in that arena. So we will reach out to you and get your feedback on it. But hopefully this momentum continues, and I think it will. But all in all, let's keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks,
all right. Great weekend.
All right. Thank you, sir. And as much as we talk about rescheduling, bipartisan support, bill was filed yesterday. That's telling in PA, which is very good.
Huge. Also, just before we get into the next segment, obviously I know we're going to have Sammy and Dan Ahrens on. Full disclosure, it's going to be a conversation about the ETF. I own the ETF. I own calls on the ETF that I've bought in the last 2 weeks. So just getting that out of the way. This isn't to pump the ETF or just to have an in-depth conversation on the mechanics within the ETF. So just wanted to say that moving forward before anybody starts throwing shit at the wall.
Yeah, well said. And I'm in the same boat as you. I own it. I have calls on it. So with that, let's get right into it because it's been an interesting week. Let's welcome back perhaps one of the smartest people in the industry, and I mean that, Sammy J from C21 Investments, VP of Corporate Development. Let's bring him up. Good to see you, sir. What's going on, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good to see you. And let's also bring up our good Dan Ahrens. Dan, I know that you kind of put yourself on mute. Let's see if he's there. Dan, you there, buddy?
He's not there yet.
Let's bring him up. All right, whatever. We'll get into that. Is he coming up? Dan, can you hear us? Dan, can
yes.
you hear us? Your camera is off. Can you turn your camera on? There it is. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Sorry for my user error there. So you introduced Sammy as one of the smartest guys in the industry, but
I was just going to say the same thing with you, Dan. You interrupted and cut me off there. You know, it's good to see you. And it's summertime, usually traditionally a slower time of the year for this industry, but I'll open it up to both you guys.
Woo,
just like I did with, I know, just like I did with Trent. Sammy, what do you make of all the stuff that's going on in the industry right now? Because I know it's something you've been involved for a long time. I must say, it's nice to see, is it not?
It's a pleasant surprise for sure. I want to qualify as well. I don't own MSOS. I have no conflict here in talking about it.
Okay. Look at Dan. Let's die.
Appreciate you, Sammy.
Sorry, Dan, but I want to stay as neutral as I can here. This is about transparency, about mechanics in the industry. There's a lot of misunderstanding about why things trade the way they do, why the space trades the way it does. And Bruce and I, are always trying to, peel back the layers to help, our echo chamber understand what's going on. And that's really all it is. I mean, I have no agreements with AdvisorShares. There's no relationship here other than Dan and I, have our colleagues. So there's a lot of people that throw stuff out there that say that I'm somehow involved. It couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
So I want to clarify.
Right. The public square is getting a little nutty here recently.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Dan, you're busy, obviously, looking at things, rebalancing, obviously, every single day, if not every day. Like, you're looking at things, and we've seen a lot of change, especially this week. So, saying that, I think we want to obviously set up expectations for this podcast and really understand what people are going to get out of this. Sammy, I'll begin with you. So, we're seeing pressure, it seems, coming from real selling in individual names, but not the ETF structure itself, as you indicated in your tweet. So, what are you seeing from your side? Like, is this broad-based de-risking, or are traders targeting specific names or themes? Like, what are you seeing, and what are you interpreting, and what should people understand in all this?
Speaking specifically about this week, what we've seen is a constant buy program, simply due to the fact that the ETF is trading at a premium, which means it has a lot more demand right now than its supply. And we're seeing supply in the underlying names. Okay. So if we talk about why does this happen, I posted this week BlackRock's long explanation on what APs and market makers, what their role is in an ETF. These are all ETF mechanics. These are not MSOS mechanics. I think that we need to make that very clear. This is normal course for ETFs. Right? When there's an arbitrage between the intrinsic value of the basket and the price of the ETF, the job of the market makers, and they're incentivized to do this because it's, they make money from trading that arbitrage, right? But that's their job. And so if you don't like it, you don't have to buy the ETF. But to suggest that the ETF doesn't have the role that it has right now in the industry is just plain incorrect. So the reason we see these rallies when we have headlines is because the ETF remains the only channel into US cannabis for larger money. It is the conduit for money to enter this space. Everybody keeps saying, they can buy on this, brokerage or that brokerage if they want the underlyings. No. Yes, retail can, but institutions cannot. And people have to get their head around that until the custody is solved, whether that's safe banking, FinCEN updated guidance. We don't know ultimately how long that process is going to take. It doesn't happen overnight. Even if we get reform tomorrow, if we got an executive order on safe banking, that doesn't mean custody is fixed tomorrow. It doesn't mean that these institutions can buy the underlyings tomorrow. We saw even when Jason and Boris took Cura and TerraSend to the TSX, it took time to slowly start getting prime brokerage back in those names. Okay. So none of this gets fixed overnight until there is widespread custody, access to these underlying names, and ultimately uplisting, because one of the other problems is the challenge of the liquidity of the market that these names trade in, whether it be the CSC and NEO in Canada or the OTC, right? The liquidity is not there. Viridian just put this note out this week about the fact that institutions simply cannot play in this illiquidity. Okay, so everybody's got to get their heads around these concepts. Once you do, you don't have to be a fan of MSOS. You don't have to be a fan of its portfolio. You just have to understand why these stocks go up on headlines. It's not because there's a million retail buyers into the underlyings. It's because there's demand into the ETF.
Right.
And that arbitrage is creating a constant buy program in the underlyings. And so everybody, and this is an important point I made yesterday, everybody assumes the reverse, that when we are drawing down, that there are sell programs out of the ETF that are causing us all to go down. And I don't know how many times I've posted this, but I'll continue to do it because it's just not true, right? We've seen buy programs out of the ETF on red days, meaning the ETF is not the supply of selling. What we do have is exhausted retail over the past 5 to 7 years that, any chance that these stocks go up or have, surges in volume. C21 traded 450,000 shares on OTC yesterday. It's like over 10 times our average volume. People see that kind of liquidity and, it makes them natural sellers. The price is up, because at this point, I think everybody's given up on the idea that these companies, good, bad, or other, are trading on their kind of fundamental intrinsic values, right? I mean, we're super cheap. Everybody knows that. Why are we cheap? Because there's no buyers in the industry. So there's no price discovery. There's nobody to come in and say this is not trading at a fair value. Except for Dan. who
Dan,
kind of
sorry, I kind of wanted to ask you a question about the portfolio construction. Are there certain names that you have to buy to achieve certain weightings of companies? Because I don't want to name names and get into certain individual names, but there are a couple names, for instance, that you purchased yesterday that consensus would be those are over-levered names that are in very bad shape from a corporate standpoint. And a lot of people would say, really, why continue to buy the stock as the companies are in shambles? Kind of just wanted to see if you could give a little bit of color on that.
Fair question. Now, there's a difference, guys, between when I, as a portfolio manager, are making rebalancing trades or anything like that, or a day like yesterday when an authorized participant in an ETF chose to do creation units, what everybody calls inflows. And, we've talked about this before, and we worked this out a couple years ago because people, rightfully so, were hating the end of day volatility, and the funds didn't want to be the cause of any problems, cause and effect. So yesterday, the fund got some inflows, and what we worked out is that authorized participant that chose to create knows to, on their own, contact these swap counterparties.
Okay.
I've said before, these swaps aren't anything exotic. They're not anything highly levered. It's just a security-based swap because everybody knows these are OTC traded cannabis companies in the U.S. that our custody bank, like all the other custody banks, can't custody. We're using a swap instead of a stock for the most part. We own Curaleaf and TerraSend, of course, partially on swap, partially direct. So at the end of the day, when there's a creation unit, they are saying, that AP is saying, here's all the positions, the basket, if you will, that they were buying those stocks throughout the day. And if I didn't set this up with swap counterparties, because they can't deliver them to the ETF, they have to deliver something called cash in lieu, because these are swaps. Instead of just dumping them at the end of the day, we said, hey, we'll buy them. We'll buy them via our swap counterparty.
So when I'm looking at this,
in this circumstance, I do not get to pick, Anthony. This is the real answer to your question.
Perfect.
They say we're hedging, And I'm like, oh, do you really, really have to deliver, or do you really have to buy those particular names?
Okay.
And the answer's, well, yeah, that's the way an ETF works.
So to interpret the inflows,
ETF works.
To interpret that inflow breakdown yesterday, those were creation units, and that capital gets allocated evenly amongst the basket. Regardless, that's not buying, let's say, at your discretion.
Now they're not going down. They're not going into the entire basket. They're not going down to the very bottom of those stocks that have been there for 3 years and are practically difficult to sell and everything else. But yeah, that was the basket that AP chose to have in their basket. So we're buying it. Now, on the other hand, there's times when people see me doing some rebalancing.
Right.
And everybody should also notice those were a bunch of really odd numbers yesterday. They're not like round lots or anything. But if you see, hey, they just chose to buy 50,000 shares of C21. Yeah, that is not an end of day closing price trade for the most part. It's Dan executing. I'm either just pushing it through if I see an opportunity, or I might be using limit orders. Now, on that same, while we're on this subject, people see me doing some rebalancing where I might be selling down a position a little bit.
Right. Which was the case yesterday, right?
Well, I am sure as hell using limit orders, and I'm only getting it filled at a price that I'm willing to accept. I'm probably selling near the high of the day. So I've seen some of these little Twitter accounts trying to think what they know I'm buying and selling. No, we know what we're doing. And if I have a position that's at the that I think is overweight and I choose to trim it some, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very carefully, using limit orders, getting a price that I'm willing to accept, probably near the high of the day, like I just said, and I might be doing some rebalancing. It's not strictly about liquidity, because do you know what the most liquid stocks in that fund are? Curaleaf and TerraSend, because they're listed on the damn TSX.
Right.
I can trim those whenever the hell I want. So
from an
that's a little bit of rebalancing in the fund. I'm getting executions where I want to get executions, but if we see an inflow, just like that inflow caused us to buy Glass House yesterday,
right,
at the closing price of the day.
Gotcha.
There's no slippage here. It's crossing at the close at the exact closing price of the day.
Okay. So with that increasing of that position, let's say with your active management strategy, when that decision is being made on, let's say, that headline, what's really going into that? Is it more so a function of, we're DCAing into the position as part of the basket of the ETF, or hey, maybe let's not make this decision now based on the price action, even though it does look juicy, as that headline could have further repercussions going down the road?
So, Anthony, I always could do that when and if I choose to. But yesterday, it was simply crossing trades at the close due to the inflow. So
right.
Now, okay. Was I making big decisions on Glass House yesterday? No. I tweeted, hey, we bought that closing price. We did, because it was an inflow. It wasn't a portfolio manager decision.
Okay. So that tweet you put out yesterday, that tweet you put out yesterday, basically catching the bottom of the day, that was not Dan, the active manager. That was capital allocation via the inflow.
Exactly.
So there were big crossed wires there with the public opinion of that yesterday, because everyone thought that you were implying that you were taking an active management approach, buying the low of the day based on the headline, which that statement is very different in its implications if it happened to get allocated via the inflow and you caught the low of the day.
Well, we did buy the low of the day, but it was just more of a, it was due to the inflow. It wasn't Dan making a big portfolio manager decision.
So everyone thought, but everyone thought that the interpretation was, and still has been this morning, Dan was buying Glass House on the headline.
Well, hey, let's talk a little bit more about active management, because I see, and let's talk about Twitter and X a little bit. So an interesting thing that we started the show on is what's going on in the past 10 days.
A lot.
Yeah, we have MSOX up a lot in the last 5 days. We have MSOS up a lot in the last 10 days, 5 days, whatever. Be very, very leery of, I'll be blunt, all the idiots and trolls on Twitter. If you see all this vitriol coming out when we have cannabis stocks up a lot, just on rumor and support and nothing real. We haven't seen anything real from the White House or the Senate yet, have we? Correct. And we're seeing these kind of gains. And you see these people crawling out from under their rocks, some of these voices and Twitter handles that we haven't heard from in months, and now they're suddenly getting back involved in cannabis. For the love of God, people, tone that noise out. Yeah. Don't take investment advice from X. And certainly don't take investment advice from X from anonymous Twitter handles that seem to have a lot of hate in their hearts, especially on a week when we have a lot of nice gains.
So what do you? A
lot of that stuff about active management, and I've said this before, active management only means it's not an index. And compared to AdvisorShares, it's 18 funds, including 5-star rated funds that I manage and some other funds that have really nice returns this year. Active management only means it's not an index. And MSOS, I have to manage with kid gloves much less actively than other funds that I would manage. I rebalance it very carefully using limit orders, and I'm very inactive. No one wants me hitting the ask or bid hard on these stocks and moving them around unnaturally. So there, I'll shut up now.
Sammy, he makes some good points, especially on Twitter. You said time and time again, I don't know how many times I have to explain things to investors time and time again, but we are starting to see a lot of haters towards the cannabis space when it comes to investing in the last week to a week and a half. What's that say about the current state we're in right now, to Dan's point?
I mean, there's a lot of exhausted people that have been invested for a long time in this space that, have unrealized losses. I'm one of them. I'm frustrated. I've been here longer than most everybody. I try to separate that, compartmentalize that from, let's talk about facts. Because ultimately, I'm just trying to share information, the knowledge that Bruce has, passed on to me over the last 6-7 years. There's no expert on this stuff more than Bruce McDonald. Okay, it's just fact. He understands arbitrage. He understands mechanics, capital markets mechanics better than anybody you'll meet. And we talk about this daily, every day, all the time. He's working on a long post to try to explain some mechanics stuff that I think will be very helpful right now. Yeah. Ultimately, when you see a week like this, where, let's talk about a tier one like Curaleaf that was, $1, just over $1 in Canada, June 23rd, and was printing 190 yesterday. Yeah. And we have no material change, no material reform. We have no idea when it's coming. Yes, we have encouraging breadcrumbs right now. There's a lot of obviously positive energy coming out of the Trump influencers, insiders. We feel like we're on the verge of something here, but that stock was up almost 90% in 2 weeks. So you're going to have some selling. You're going to have some selling of people that were buying the lows. You're going to have some selling of people finally feeling like they have some liquidity. And then you're going to have, all of these names have legacy vendor paper in them, because they do. Most of these MSOs were roll-ups of privates, and private vended in companies, for the most part, have very low to no cost basis on their shares. They can sell at any price. They just need the liquidity. So there's a good chance that what we see on these surge, these volume surge weeks with headlines is some of those people selling because they finally have an opportunity to.
But that's good.
Ultimately, sure, we need the legacy people, to change over. We need fresh money, fresh investors in this space, right? We're not going to. There's a lot of wood to chop from here to where we want to get to, right?
The data is stale, right?
And then I think one of the big things that we need to talk about is the difference between market makers on arbitrage of the ETF premium or discount, and on FX arb, which is the arbitrage between the Canadian and the US market. That's another thing that we're seeing print on all of these names. because if there's a buyer in Canada and and a seller in the US, there are FX houses that specifically try to capture fractions of pennies on these trades. Okay, so that's another thing that we're seeing in the prints. But one of the main things we're seeing in these prints is a short algo that is not cannabis specific. I have to make this very clear. This is not a cannabis short algo. This is a broad market quant that has an opinion that, especially on liquid markets, that stocks are easier to go down than they are to go up. And this thing has been a blanket on all of our names.
Yes.
Predates MSOS. It was there in 2018. It was there in 2019. And I watch it all day, every day. As the energy starts to slow down on a day like yesterday, immediately they come in, they start offering right below market. They start spoofing with massive dark offers to scare people. And then you'll see their bids come in 5 cents lower because they're waiting essentially for retail to sell into them. And they capture these pennies or these nickels all day, every day on all of these names, but it's not just cannabis names, on all the names in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's likely, Bruce has pretty good experience on this stuff. He's pretty certain it's one of the big U.S. institutions that runs this. They're not technically doing anything,
it's probably Jane Street.
It's probably Jane Street. That's how we feel, but we don't have proof.
Yeah.
And a lot of even a Jane Street, people are making noise about Jane Street because they are an AP or a market maker in the ETF.
Yeah.
Jane Street is not one shop. It's 100 different shops that don't talk to each other. So their FX house and their arbitrage house and their trading house, these are all different entities inside of Jane Street. And they're not working together on some, conspiracy to bring down the cannabis stocks.
It's like you said on FX. Their job is to clip coupons and make an arb, and there's no discretion in there. It is what it is. If they can make it, they can make it.
Market making has no conscience. There's no fundamental conscience on this stuff. They don't care if C21 should be 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents, $1. They're just in it to clip the economic incentive. That's their job. But
all different desks, all different profit and loss centers within the umbrella of Jane Street. Yeah.
But the short algo specifically does cross a line in that it spoofs these names, which is illegal. And, the regulators are asleep on this. And, Bruce, for instance, he's taken on a role in Canada now where he's the advisor to the regulators here to try to affect change.
Right.
So going on Twitter and screaming about, well, there's a conspiracy and these guys, we're actually out there trying to make this market healthier and collecting massive amounts of data over the last 5 to 6 years to try to affect change, because we are obviously in it as one of the companies in this basket, and we ultimately we don't win unless everybody wins. So we are on everyone's team. We're trying to best educate everybody on with whatever transparency we can use, so that people understand that there's no conspiracy to against retail to steal retail. While some of the things we see inside, this is exit liquidity for insiders. Where are these insider transactions? Correct. Please show me them. I haven't seen a single one. How is this exit liquidity for insiders? There's no C21 insider selling any stock. It's never happened. I don't understand where people get this stuff.
Well, I think this is badly needed, as we potentially could see a next stage in the industry. We need to have some fresh new faces, voices, education on what people should really understand what's at stake, because as this industry has been stale with no new investors, people start to get antsy. They start coming up with ideologies. And I think that's kind of the reality as to where we are, especially in the Twitterverse right now. But people only want to know what they want to know. It's amazing in today's day and age as to what social media can do. But, I think the big thing here today, Dan, Sammy, this has been good. If you could put it in as little words as possible, Dan and Sammy, for each of you, what is the big takeaway here from what we've just discussed? Dan, I'll begin with you.
Well, hey, I want to talk just a little bit more about the fund. And since we talked about Jane Street, people that look at our annual report or semi-annual report will see that we have swap counterparties at Nomura, at Clear Street. Oh, since we're talking about, and at Cantor Fitzgerald. Those desks are providing simple security-based swaps on these names that we can't hold otherwise unless we held them via swap. They don't care about market making. They don't care about ARB desks, anything like that those big firms have. They're simply providing security-based swaps, and they are trading the underlying because those firms can hold the underlying. The next thing is I'm really, really looking forward to the day when we have federal reform. Yes. And we can own a lot of these stocks directly. We still might use some swaps because we're so darn concentrated in some of these names. But no, it makes the fund a whole lot easier, less expensive internal fees, more tax efficient, all sorts of reasons. And here's a question for you. Once we have federal reform, is there a need to have the fund still, MSOS? Are there financial funds out there? Are there technology funds out there? Are there healthcare funds out there? Can people buy healthcare fund stocks direct? Of course they can. Do people still want to use a healthcare ETF? Of course they do. So once again, we're all on the same team here. We're looking for growth. We're looking to grow our assets. And we really, really do want federal reform. And if people, for those that can buy these stocks direct, knock yourselves out, please. Yeah. Put a lot of money into them if you so choose to. I just want the stocks to go up in value.
Well, so Sammy's point, clearly from $1 to $1.90 based on rumors. I know rescheduling doesn't solve any problems, but I think what everybody wants to know is just like how much buying power and interest does happen in the event where rescheduling happens. A lot. How long it sustains itself, I can't answer that. None of us can answer that. But if there's any clear indication as to how much interest is still in this space, every now and then, as we've experienced the past 5 years, you get these hot rumors, every 6 months. And everyone you talk to right now feels like this is different in comparison to the past. But a 90% return in a matter of 10 days is pretty impressive based off of rumors, Sammy.
Look, the ETF traded 90-ish million notional yesterday. I think the underlying basket was 20, 24, something like that at the end of the day. So, when we're talking about interest in the space, it's being reflected through the ETF. It's just as simple as that. That's something it's fact. And ultimately, where these things should go, will go, none of us can answer, but we all have to remember there's a difference between the market mechanics and the hype and delay cycles of reform, and what fundamentally is going on with these companies, which is there's a vast spectrum in this basket as to what's happening. Some are quite healthy, some are growing, some are struggling, some are over leveraged. So everybody wants to win here. Most of the people left talking about this in our community are ultimately just sellers. These aren't people that are looking to put new money into the space. They're looking to exit at a higher price, right? And for companies, we're trying to attract long-term investors. So we may have a different, goal and focus than what the community that's discussing these stocks has, which is ultimately get the stock up because I want to get out for the most part, right? And we want to build long-term value in these companies. That's ultimately our goal. I mean, that's our responsibility. So we're gonna continue to kind of stay the course at the company level. I think the industry still has a lot of future with it. We don't know ultimately how it's going to shake out. It does feel like this time is different on reform, but
it does.
It doesn't matter until we actually see the change and we see rescheduling. 280E changes a lot because right now, we can look at earnings before tax and all these names. That's how I choose to look at the space now. I think 280E is ultimately going to go away. We don't know how the uncertain tax provisions are going to play out, whether it's going to be, some sort of payment plan. We don't know if it's going to get settled in the court case. But I'm looking at earnings before tax because ultimately the leverage on a lot of these names is eating a lot of the operating profit. And so that's how, if you want to talk about what is a company worth right now in this basket, you have to look at that lens. What is the operating profit? How much of the operating profit is getting eaten by the leverage? And when 280E falls off and the leverage now become, the carrying cost of the interest on these names becomes an expense, that becomes very helpful for a lot of these companies. But will they make it, right? Because a lot of them don't have the runway. And we've seen that, unfortunately, with a few names in the industry already. And then, where's the growth? There's encouraging signs with Pennsylvania. I know that was your previous guest with Jushi. There's, ultimately, if the hemp loophole gets closed, even if it's been, even if it's delayed a year, there is going to be a moment in time where the state legal industry starts to siphon back what it lost to the intoxicating hemp industry, right? Because ultimately people want safe, legal, regulated access to cannabis. So
it's amazing what it's amazing. Yeah, I was going to say it's amazing what Texas has done, I think, indirectly for the cannabis space. It really shed light on a number of things. But when you look at it that way, Anthony, when you talk about, yes, this implementation is going to take over the course of the year, to Sammy's point, you'll start to see a shift back towards the cannabis industry when it comes to some of that lost revenue pertaining to that. And it's a valid point, right? I didn't even get your thoughts on that announcement.
It'll find its way back in.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been good. Very educational. And we're going to have to actually clip up a lot of short clips and get this out on Twitter afterwards. So, gents, when we have that, we'll make sure to tag you. And hopefully some of these people that have a theory in their head, as I always say in my evergreens, stay open-minded and stay connected. So maybe that's the idea here. But before I let you go, Dan, real quick, and I know there were some people talking about this, I think there's a little bit of fear mongering. There are some valid points in the comments right now, but this whole situation with Glasshouse, what do you make of it? And is this something like, from an optics standpoint? Yes, it doesn't sound good, but truthfully, like some of the people just texted me right now, is that in due time this will pass. This is a big nothing. But what's your thoughts on it all right now?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier: is be leery of all the haters and false information being spewed on Twitter. Don't put much thought into it. Glass is up 6.9% right now on the day. I know it went on a wild ride yesterday, rightfully so. I think Kyle and Graham are stressed out and very busy boys right now. We've indirectly been in touch with them. We have we know people that have been in touch with them. So no, I think it is overblown, but God, don't listen to Twitter. Don't make short-term decisions. Don't overreact to stuff, people. I think Glass is going to be just fine. I think it's one of the very best operators out there. I think it's one of the biggest companies to gain on federal reform potential in the future. So this too shall pass. Now, is it still something that's a big deal? Yeah. But Anthony talked about it earlier. It's not about cannabis. It's about them raiding farms in California, butting heads with Gavin Newsom and everything else. I don't think there was any. I think Glass probably has very good employment practices. They have claimed that they do. Yeah. I think there might have been some children probably in the crowds and the protesters and stuff. And it's probably just that. Am I guaranteeing it? No, because I don't have firsthand information. But that's what it looks like.
Everybody jumped to the conclusion that what they see is fact, right? And we just simply don't know.
And has everybody who's been to Glass House? It is a big glass house. It is not a bunch of open fields.
It's not a field.
There's a great video of a guy carrying a patio chair over his head. And he has a towel with a spoon that looks like a microphone with a helicopter sound. And when you zoom out, it looks like he's in a helicopter and you believe it. But then when he zooms out, you realize it's just a plastic chair. And I think that's the world we live in right now.
That is our world.
Yeah.
Plato's allegory of a cave. If you guys didn't study philosophy.
Sammy, good stuff. I know you educated me some stuff a couple of years ago in Chicago at Benzenga, because I was talking about all these stocks that are undervalued right now. And you're like, Shad, calm down. Let me walk you through a few things. And you talked about the ETF and how much volume is actually traded on behalf of the industry every single day. And because it has access to liquidity and trades on a senior exchange, it was kind of like an enlightening little tutorial that you gave me. But glad you educated me. Dan, thanks for the walkthrough here today. And I think a lot of people get a lot of value out of this. But gents, hopefully get some good news here in the next little bit, because looks like some real clear, beautiful, sunny days if it does happen. But the big question is if. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Sammy. Banger of a show today. A lot of great education.
Yeah.
That was needed. And I think we addressed obviously the glass house thing too. So just calm down, everybody. Chill. One last thing I forgot to ask you too, like you said, is that news about hemp and the 1-year trajectory. So real quick takeaway. What do people take from that, knowing that it's a year out? Why do you think that decision was made?
I actually have no idea. I reached out to a couple of people last night on the rationality around the year extension. I think it's going to be something that materializes over time, and they're getting one last lifeline. Or maybe there's federal reform coming down the line in the form of the Farm Bill.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a big wait and see approach.
Yeah, gradually over time, this loophole, I would think, gets closed, and the proper infrastructure that makes sense for both sides as to what people are trying to figure out here will be actually thought through versus a quick rash decision. But that was interesting to learn that yesterday. All right. All eyes will be on this industry as we continue to follow it closely. So make sure that you all stay connected. Make sure to scan this QR code. We'll look at some of the movers and the industry, because we're starting to talk a lot more about stocks. Why? Because for obvious reasons. And if there's any information that we have on reform side, make sure to check in, smash on that bell for notifications to get the latest updates. But stay connected with us. And as usual, like I said, make sure to scan that QR code to become a daily baked-in newsletter subscriber to give you updates every single day. And now's the time, especially, to stay real close and real connected. My friend, enjoy the rest of your day. Good job here today. And see you back here Monday at 4. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. So what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Traded Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.